Izkyum ku iduse orodoyu iveliko. Uronora.
Inomotu otunum isarabea. Au kunana awisi Ueda kunam.
Greetings everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Fumito Ueda podcast. I am your regular host Albert, and today I am joined once again by my co-host Logan. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to start talking about our subject this week.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah. What did you think of last week's how I put together the episode? Were you happy with kind of how it turned out?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I listened to. I think I thought I listened to all of it, but then I realized that I didn't catch the last 10 minutes or something. So I listened to most of it. I did like it. I guess maybe some of the audio breaks. Need maybe a little explanation. Like that's what I would recommend. Just put it on the screen. Like, oh, this is audio from the Mega 64 sketch. I do like that though. It makes it feel like a kind of like a radio show, because I know they do that a lot on radio shows. They'll put music on the beginning and then and some other points in the show.
That's kind of the vibe I'm going for, definitely, with it. And but yeah, I definitely take that on board, and I definitely going to incorporate that. So yeah, awesome. So listeners,
I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
I should have maybe said that before we started recording, but
oh, I love it. I appreciate it. I'll probably either the editing is real with this sort of stuff, man. I can chop this, put it elsewhere, however you like. It's all good. It's all good. Awesome. So, to our listeners, for our new listeners, the artist Fumito Ueda, who created Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian, is currently leading his new studio, Gen Design, in developing a new title, The Girl and the Sleeping Giant, as we've come to call it. Each week, we chronicle the creation of this forthcoming adventure in the form of news, informed and wild speculation, analyses, and more. Interwoven with reporting on and breaking down any and all new developments, we are also revisiting Ueda's first 3 titles, starting with Shadow of the Colossus, followed by Ico, and concluding with The Last Guardian. In doing so, we endeavor to compile a fully comprehensive archive of material, long-form, in-depth analyses and discussions on each character, creature, and location, personal stories from fellow appreciators of Ueda's work, interviews, theories, interpretations, and much, much more. The time has now come for Mr. Ueda's unmatched and inimitable form of ongoing storytelling, world-building, and overall contribution to the artistic validity and power of this medium, the most profoundly moving and life-affirming art form ever, to receive a thorough, intimate, and loving chronicle, now and for posterity, from the very community that has so embraced, cherished, celebrated, and resonated with the man, his team, and their work for close to 2 decades. We wish to thank you for the privilege of your time in listening in, and for joining us on this adventure. With that regular rundown out of the way, let's get the show started.
Yeah.
Buddy, amazing. All right. Well, this is a real thing now. We're actually up to episode 2, so that officially makes a thing. But you were touching on it a bit in your in the sort of pre-show. But yeah, how's your week been, man?
It's been all right. I've just been working, trying to kind of finally get used to the school year, which kind of surprised me with a lot of work in the start, a lot of reading to do. But I've been slowly kind of getting more and more free time.
Yeah.
I've been able to start playing this game, Deadly Premonition, again, which I've almost beaten.
Nice.
Now, which is a really fun and weird Japanese game.
If I remember correctly, I'm looking it up now. Deadly Premonition. Who developed that?
That was Swery65, I think is what they call him.
Yeah.
Who did D4.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yeah, I've seen this one occur in a few different lists for like survival
Yeah.
horror. It's yeah, I'm really intrigued by it, man.
It's a really, you could describe it as silly. Like it's really like there's like a lot of horror elements in there, but like mostly it's like this really irreverent kind of take on the show Twin Peaks from the 90s, which I'm a fan of. So
there you go. Yeah, I'm
I wanted
a
to play this game.
huge Twin Peaks guy, man. Did you watch
Yep.
season 3?
Yes, I did. It was amazing.
It was well, talk about next level, and talk about like you know, really holding your audience accountable for their own, like, again, the way that I phrase it with Lynch is that he respects his audience to the point where he'll be comfortable with a lingering shot and get into like to the point where it's like, I'm not going to do the narrative work here. For me, me lingering on this shot is asking you the question, what does this make you feel like? What are you thinking right now? And he engages with his audiences. That's why he kind of resonates with Kojima that way too. So yeah, I mean, that pretty much guarantees you to be on the upcoming, if you saw the schedule of Death Stranding podcast, we're going to have a David Lynch special. So I think.
Oh boy, yeah, I'll definitly try to make it for that then.
we'll work around your schedule to make that one happen, buddy, because I would love to riff about Lynch with you on that for sure. But listeners, so for those joining the new show, so as I mentioned, Fumito Ueda podcast, we're exploring these titles in this way, both looking ahead towards the release of the new title, which we've got. I just published it actually recently on Instagram. We have our schedule leading up to E3. Everything that I touched on in episode 1, but it's all sort of nicely laid out there. So I'm probably going to be referring to that one a whole bunch as well. So, and it's to get sort of ourselves as hosts and what we're doing here at Attractive Artistry, and also our listeners kind of on the same wavelength. With going forward week by week with the show. So this episode is titled "A Piano Concerto to a Symphony," which is one of the phrases rather that Bluepoint used to describe how they've treated this remake, so to speak, of Shadow of the Colossus. Did you see that interview, by the way, in some of the behind the scenes stuff that they've been publishing?
I feel like they posted so much of that I can't remember exactly if I've seen it. But I probably have.
Yeah, it's got 9.7 on IGN. Sorry if people are like concerned about spoilers, but needless to say, and I definitely don't use they're a factor certainly, but like reviews aren't the be all end all. What a game it is. It doesn't brand games. I don't think reviews kind of have that scorching effect on games legacy that way. For me, it's about your relationship with the media, with like the medium, and like with the work itself. But when I saw that pop up, I was like, well, they've taken this beyond, man. They've made this more than about as everything we touched on last week, which was like that it's not a cash-in. This is honoring a classic in a way where it feels like it's the true fulfillment of what it was, broken free from this, like, as I call it, this pixelated shell of PS2 graphics. Like, it's like this has just shattered through that, and this is what it was all along. And I think that's it's the most crystallized way that I could put my feelings towards the remake. So how about you?
In some ways, I definitely agree with that. I've just been exposed to like a lot of the negativity surrounding the remake also, specifically when someone on Reddit told me to kill myself for saying that a lot of Bluepoint's changes weren't that bad.
Yeah, so that person is clearly hurting pretty bad inside, and that was entirely projection, and there's like zero of that is about like either you or Fumito Ueda. It's like, look at yourself, buddy.
I mean, certainly that guy took it too far, but I do understand the sort of pain that some people feel. I understand it, and I don't entirely agree with it. I really like seeing what Bluepoint's done with the title. Yeah. And in some respects, certainly, I mean, it's really an evolution, not in the least in the way that they got the hair on the Colossi. I know that is super, super amazing to kind of finally see. Ueda clearly tried to make this hair as realistic as possible, but you couldn't really do anything with hair physics on a PS2. And now that's really been brought into the modern day. And that's just one example of what is really Bluepoint is focused on to make it really good. And right now, I mean, the game has a 92 on Metacritic, and it is the second best reviewed game of the year. behind Celeste, which I know is an indie game. And it is what it is. I'll take second place.
Well, there you go. And yeah, that's the thing. It did get the 10 out of 10 Celeste, definitely. But and yeah, I'm curious about. I might even look into possibly doing an interactive artistry about that one. It sort of has been on everyone's radar there. But I've been just like on the Instagram and on Twitter as well, just kind of like with my finger on the pulse of it, of the reception of the title, and messaging as well, doing my, I guess, again, irrepressible. I'm not able to contain how this beautiful treatment of something so kindred to me. It's like really being reassured. Like I'm just like you. Like I can kind of get a bit, like down, I suppose, on some of the negativity of the web, of life, of all this stuff. But when I see like, yeah, a creator, and this is one of the really like important aspects of art for me, is how it can transport you in a way that isn't just like as escapism, but it can transport you in a way back to like, oh wow, this is what people are capable of when they come together, and when they resonate, when they connect this much. And in any of the behind the scenes, you can see they're just a bunch of just like people. I feel they're almost like museum staff, like that we just wanted to curate this, to clean this up. Like that's how I feel. Imagine if you treated, say a Colossi. Look, if you just take like Basaran or something, for example, and you saw and you turned that model around, and in fact, in one of the latest videos, I'll cut to some of the audio for it for sure.
The process for building the Colossi for the PS4 wasn't exactly simple. We had to play the game and basically understand how the characters worked, and then we got the extracted data from the original game and used it to create higher res versions of the character. This is actually a 3D model that was extracted from the original game. There's a lot of detail in these characters that it's hard to read in the original because it was so low res. We wanted to capture that stuff and be true to what they originally had in the game. So if we look at this, there's a lot of detail that's been sculpted into here. The original version of it was very flat. We went in and kind of banged it up, scratched it, kind of told a story in the model. We put sword marks and chips and broken things that were implied in the original, but now that we have such high resolution, we can actually see it. We tried to keep it as close to the original as possible. So here is the original model, and this is the up-res version. You can see here, these only have like maybe 8 sides, as these have probably 20. So this poly count is 11,000 tries. And this poly count is 61,000 tries. They took a long time. They're essentially a level in themselves. Like they're unlike any character I've ever worked on because they're so huge and time consuming. A lot of love went into them, and I hope that the fans of the game can appreciate the detail that has been put in. It's been a labor of love, and we hope that it comes through.
But he describes, look, literally when we went in to the model, there just wasn't the texture there. It was just like either flat, or there was the hint of it, but it was all garbled. And think of that as like mud, and think of it as like pixelated 2005 era like pixel mud. And they're archaeologists like scraping that mud away and finding out what was actually underneath,
Nice metaphor.
There you go. That's right. And so, and that's the most loving, beautiful thing. Like that's another level that I resonate, is like it's almost like preservation. I want people to really understand that it's not a cash in. It's not like westernifying it or losing some of the dappled light, beautiful Fumito Ueda magic. Fumito is fully behind it. He wasn't directly involved, but he fully supports it. Ko Otani is over the moon about it, with how, and you can see that interview there where he talks about how far things have come with it, and that's it. Really, I really hope people don't immediately. But again, you can't help with the internet sometimes. But I'll be there, maybe alongside yourself, just like waving that little kind of quiet little voice kind of flag of just like, by the way, they're actually really like wholesome people. They have a lot of
Yeah.
integrity as artists, and they're making this from a place of not just love, but absolute reverence and respect. And yeah, I mean, it's always risk taking with when you tap into people's nostalgia, because there's that halcyon kind of sheen that people put on these things and these notions of being untouchable. But again, if you really stigmatize things that way, that's how your perception of the world can become pretty warped, and that's just not healthy, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I understand passion and I understand loyalty to the original creation, but if you're going into to the point of, as you said, like people being as aggressive as you've heard them be, it really isn't about the art anymore. It's not about the other person. It's about your relationship with yourself and with like your priorities and with where you're coming at from with that kind of anger. It is crazy, but I think overall I've heard a lot of positivity. You know, a lot of it.
Yeah, I think the negative voices are the loudest, as we know.
Yeah, always. That's right.
And at the same time, like I said, I don't want to discount the negativity, because I think some of the people who are having some negative thoughts probably do really appreciate Ueda, and that's just their way of showing that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's different, but
Oh yeah, no blanket
Yeah.
statements. Definitely no blanket statements. Like if you have an articulated and discerning point of view that incorporates like negativity and is constructive, then that's great. Like that's totally understandable for sure. For sure. Oh well. Yeah. Did you have any other extra riffs on that one there? Before I crack on with just describing. Yep. Like the
Not on that specific topic. No. We only have 3 days left. That's exciting.
Hey, oh my god, oh my god. Well, I'll sort of swoop past the structure just for our like new listeners, and also just to remind regular listeners of how we kind of lay things out here. So we've dipped into it a bit with our sort of weekly catch up. We'll kind of pick back up after I've kind of gone through this here. I try to keep it sort of near the start of each show, so it's easy for people to kind of find in terms of like an index for a book or whatever. So we have our weekly catch up. We'll then have our overview of what we're going to sort of discuss on this week, which will be essentially just the remake and that it was made and how it was made and how it's being received and how things have been done differently. And as you heard Logan say, it is 3 days out from both of us getting our hands on it and experiencing it firsthand. So our hopes, our feelings, our dreams, or whatever, like of what we what we want to share, leading up to the release and how basically, this is it. Like, after the release, we'll have the thing. It'll be in our lives, and everything that, for example, when I was, first looking at the screenshots, I started imagining just like how they've populated. Like, it's a pretty desolate game. Even the PS3 version, like textures, things are pretty bare. But from what I've been seeing, it just, like, especially like if you listen to anything from like Kind of Funny, like Tim Geddes is like, oh, I have a 70-inch TV. I play The Witcher. I play all these, like, I play Horizon. He's like, it's nothing compared to Shadow. It's like Shadow, and I'm like, oh wow, that's huge, because he's such a big tech guy, and he loves his 4K, and he's like, nothing has showcased my TV better than Shadow of the Colossus remake, and I was like, damn, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the subject, our listeners. Then we'll have a little bit of news on what we've heard, either from The Girl and the Sleeping Giant, which isn't much, and we're not expecting very much for a while actually for that one. They're just sort of ferreting away there, working on that one. Then we'll have our regular Reddit rundown, which is we just jump on the Reddit, see what kind of calls out to us, and give a few people a shout out for what they do. And then we'll have a Reddit readout. We'll just sort of single out one particular person who's contributed maybe a story, either from, I think you mentioned Logan coming across a story, which I think it would be great if you could read that one out, about The Last Guardian not being fun, but that being the point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I want to hear that one from yourself.
I have that open right now.
Oh, my man, we're getting ready for it. Then we have our main topic, which again, it's really is about Bluepoint. There'll be a lot of clips throughout this one here of just throwing it to them, and it's just going to be a little kind of low-key love letter, or rather unabashed love letter, to these folks who have been so respectful and who are so talented and are just such worthwhile creators and human beings, you know, the people at Bluepoint. So that's going to be main topic. After that, we have our supporter shoutouts from Patreon and all our different sort of platforms, outlets and such, and then we'll have our sign off. So that's us. So wonderful. Back into our weekly catch up, which is our first segment. So we kind of did a little tangent there into kind of explaining for the listeners, but so you have mentioned two things to me which intrigued me. You've mentioned just right before we recorded, you posted, "Ooh, I've got something I want to talk about." I'm like, go for it, buddy.
Yeah, so this is something I just saw a few hours ago. I just finished some textbook reading, and I just checked Twitch, which I do like maybe once or twice a day to see kind of what's going on, who's streaming what. And the way I use Twitch is I don't really follow people so much as I follow games. And obviously I follow all three of the Team Eco games. And I saw that someone was streaming Eco. And I said, oh, cool, let me just check that out, see where they are. And so I checked out their stream, and they had gotten to the part where Eco and Yorda enter kind of what I call the cave system. Which is sort of this, you know, stony, carved out cave area of the castle where way down below you can kind of see these waterworks that you come into later. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was walking through there, and there's a gap where you have to jump over, and you have to get Yorda to jump and grab your hand, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And he jumped over, and he's like, oh, I don't think Yorda can make that jump. I'm just going to look around and see what to do. And he looked around for a while, and eventually I got kind of annoyed, and I just typed in the chat. I said, go right to the edge, because he tried calling for Yorda to jump over, and he wasn't close to the edge, which I think Eco has to be for her to sort of get her confidence up and jump. And so what happened was something that I've never seen before. And I don't know if this is a well-known thing. I posted about it on my blog, and no one's really responded to it. I don't know if this is, you know, something that people know about in Eco, but what he did was he misinterpreted my comment of going to the edge, and he actually went to the edge of one of the one of the areas you walk on. And he kind of jumped off, which you'd think would normally lead to death. But what actually happened was there's a ledge right under that he grabbed onto, and he crawled along that ledge to this other kind of platform where there was this pipe that he climbed down, and it took him to those waterworks that you go to near the end of the game. And I was amazed because I have never seen anyone do that. There's a pipe when you get into that area. Say you're playing Eco, and I'm trying to be vague about it, but you know, after the big bridge scene, you kind of fall down, whatever. And then you get up and you go to these waterworks areas, and there's a pipe on the right, and you climb that pipe, and then the pipe breaks.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And it falls down. So it's almost like a troll. I called it the troll pipe.
Yeah.
But in this part of the game, you can actually fully climb up and down that pipe without it breaking to explore that watery area before you're even supposed to go there in the main game. Oh. Did you know that this was possible?
No, that's crazy. What the hell? Look at this guy. Oh, listeners, like Logan making the discoveries. That's nuts, man.
And I'm sure that it was intentionally designed by the developers, because you can't do that area. You know, you can't like actually go through it the way you do at the end of the game to like, you know, fight the queen and whatever. Like you can't go that route where you go into like that big cylindrical kind of aquifer room or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You can't do that, because the machines aren't working. There's a closed gate, so you don't have this crate that you need to climb around. Yeah. But that area is there. You can swim around.
That's nuts. I can't even believe that.
I need to know if this is like a thing people know about, and I'm sure there's some people. I'm surprised that I've never heard anyone talk about it. Yeah. And it's so weird that like the day we're recording this, I saw this crazy thing about one of the games that I didn't even know, where it's just like a weird kind of sequence break, sort of, but not actually.
That is incredible, dude. And I gotta say, I'm sorry, but like the syncopatedness of like the serendipity of like right before we record, like something happening, it's nuts. Like with the postcard last time and with this, and I love that, by the way, because I remember doing a deep dive into this. Like I can't remember. I'll have to educate myself and maybe post it and share it. You know, I'll do another deep dive because of my previous deep dive, where this guy he was exploring like the code of Shadow of the Colossus. He was jumping all around, he's sort of a specialist in that regard, and I wonder if we may even be able to get in touch with him, or maybe if we come across whether he or not he's come across what you found, and maybe even get him on the show, to talk about this.
So are you talking about Nomad?
Oh, is that the guy? Yes, I think that's the guy.
Probably is. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great.
It's so good, and so, but I love that because it adds to the sort of magic of these these games. Definitely. I want to quickly do a rundown of the headlines which we've been getting. So, Shadow of the Colossus PS4 remake exceeds the original. That is from TechCrunch. We have Shadow of the Colossus sets a new standard for classic game remakes. That's from VentureBeat. Then we have Shadow of the Colossus review, an incredibly faithful remake of a classic game. From Polygon, we have the remake puts the game's artistic vision in the player's hands, right? And then it says perfect remake for newcomers and old fans alike. So there's a lot of love, and I'm looking for it now. It was something along the lines of, it was very very what's the word, zealous. It was like Shadow of the Colossus remake makes the old one like not worth it anymore or something. It was something very very effusive. It was like this is the new and so needless to say, that's kind of the symptom really of when and I really believe this is the case with like the most worthwhile art and the most transcendent art, is when it so much of a collective group of people's hearts and souls and love and truth and passion and respect was poured in, everything that just bleeds out into the world, and then that is just something that the world picks up on. We've had a few this from the Reddit, again, this is bleeding into Reddit readout. We had one say something like, "Oh, it loses its magic in its quest for technical brilliance." That was USA Gamer. But that's...
I linked that article on my blog just because I found it interesting. I wanted to showcase the other side.
You need to, absolutely. But to me, there's that ratio of like about 7 good articles to the 1. So, but again, everything is valid, and I like to I really like hearing both perspectives for sure. And it's also, there's just something really like comforting and lovely, and then it's that knowledge of maybe say you've connected really strongly with like an area of like a national park or something that you went to as a kid, that there are national parks, some of them at least, that are being redeveloped. The laws are being rewritten to kind of take them down or reduce their space, and maybe so that there can be development there. So nothing in life is really kind of guaranteed from that point of view. Like things that you love can regularly be bulldozed over, all these things, nothing is sacred in that way. So to know that 13 years later, 2005, 2018, that same patch of place, like in either, like again using the national park analogy, or like a beautiful house that you lived in or something, to know that is not only safe, but it's been beautifully, respectfully restored with like a lovely like cordon around it of just like, respect this space. This is like, there's the listed heritage sites around the world, like Shadow of the Colossus. Like it's even appropriate. Like my girlfriend and I, we went to Ha Long Bay, right, in Vietnam. We did the kayaking there. Yeah. So these massive shapes, like these huge, they're basically colossi from like Fumito Ueda probably saw a photo or two of them, but they're insanely like they bear down on you, and there's this humility you feel of like, this is nature, and no wonder this is a heritage listed protected site, because we respect it so much, and because it is this example of a natural wonder. And I feel like in a way the same has been extended to Shadow of the Colossus, where it's like so much like people have resonated so deeply with it, and the story of it is so timeless and so like a fairy tale. I mean, it is a fairy tale really, told in this enduring medium, that it's just a way of saying, what, now this is part of our protected, carried on into posterity. Yeah. So that's sort of my kind of museum tinged, art restoration tinged kind of view of how the remake's been handled and where it came from for them to make it. Yeah. So do you have a particular plan for like on the day what you're going to do? Going to set aside any amount of time, or just going to like jump straight into it, or like I'm going to go play it probably all the way through. Just demolish that thing, demolish it, I was going to say. And then for when we're doing episode by episode, I don't know how it'll work with save files, but I'll make sure that I can revisit each one, so go through each one and
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So for each of our listeners who, by the way, again, listeners, we're looking for, I've posted the schedule on the Fumito Ueda podcast Instagram, which is just instagram.com/Fumito Ueda podcast. Please do get in touch if you see ahead in the schedule any particular colossi that you'd like to speak to, because what we'll be doing, we'll have you on the show. You don't have to stay for the whole however many hours. We'll just like have you on, riff with you in person about like what your experience was, just to kind of get and like maybe if you had any particular notes, or like you or have a tattoo of that particular colossi, or the name means something to you, or you played it during a particular time in your life, or reminds you of whatever the story is. We'd love to hear it. And then we'll also be reading stories from folks who have written in. So that's why announcing the schedule this early is great, because then people can see it and they can be like, oh well, and I can start sort of collecting these sort of colossi specific stories, which I think will be quite a fun thing for the show to like be reading that. Are you looking forward to that, Logan?
Yeah, no, I am. I think, I hope we can find people. I think we found a few, at least certainly stories to read already, which is really cool.
We have.
And maybe if we don't find people to talk about specific colossi, we can just get people who want to talk about the game, who might kind of offer a different opinion,
right.
than we can say. So yeah, that would be fun.
We have two actually from Instagram. We have Akita Lockwood, who has messaged in, and I believe she's from Romania. And I said, yeah, she sort of was liking a whole bunch of our posts. And I said, look, if you had this ability to, or the willingness, or that you wanted to set aside the time to do it, she's like, because she does these drawings, right? And she's like, well, I'm very surprised and like flattered that you'd like ask me onto the show. And like, again, we also, the reason I raised this example first and foremost is if you're like not a native English speaker, as long as you have a friend interpreting, like, by the way, Logan, I don't know if you've heard these. They're actually really entertaining podcasts when there's someone on who is translating for the other. They end up being quite amusing. And
I haven't heard it, but it sounds cool.
Yeah. Watch any interview between Guillermo del Toro and Hideo Kojima, and you can see there's a lot of fun related, And then also for any listeners tuning in who may be of that country, they can kind of relate and stuff. So that's kind of fun. So that she was just talking in general about when she'd be able to appear. And then we had Animal Clan 101, who has actually submitted her beautiful story for the very first Colossi, Valos. The very first Colossus, yeah. So that's kind of our first story for that first episode, which is going to be 2 weeks from now, because the next week is going to be us just discussing. I have so many notes and thoughts about just the Forbidden Lands and Yorda and Mono and Mono and Wanda, my bad, and to share with you, Logan, and because we've had so many years, right, since we first played it, to think, and some of it is left kind of ambiguous, that it's nice to kind of maybe contemplate like how would they have gotten to this stage and all that stuff. So that's going to be the next episode. There, you're gonna go ahead.
So yeah, I think we might have some space to talk, and I hope I can find these again, about I'm sure we're going to devote an entire episode to this later on, but maybe we'll touch on the film script, which a few pages of which we've actually seen on Twitter. I don't know if you saw these when they were tweeted.
Whoa! No, which was you need to send that to me straight away, dude.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Which was a film script from, I want to say 2010. Which I believe was being circulated around, Hollywood, that someone did write for a prospective film adaptation.
Yeah. This was before Muschietti was involved, right?
It was before Muschietti was involved, and it was actually even before the person who we know was working on a Shadow of the Colossus script, which is, I believe, the guy who wrote the movie Hannah. I don't remember his name. This was not his script. This was so this is like a script from a time where we didn't even know that there was a script, essentially.
That's nuts.
But there's a script someone wrote, and it's pretty bad. It does try to go into how did they get here, though, and that's why maybe we can touch on that next week. But definitely, when we talk about the movie project, we'll go into that.
We should even just like talk. Maybe you have like a joke question and just field it. Maybe do a poll. Is like, what could be the most cringe thing that Hollywood could come up with? Just to put that out there, to sort of jinx it to go the other way, because like maybe say for example like Prince of Persia with Jake Gyllenhaal and just they haven't been able to nail it yet. I have good hopes for Tomb Raider, actually. I'm getting pretty good vibes from that, yeah. And also many potential if the universe wants this to be kind of tease. I've been discussing with one of my co-hosts potentially, and now everyone make sure you're sitting down, potentially adding another show to the schedule. We'd have to, because again, with that 4, it sort of is kind of at the very sort of, that sort of fills out the week within our capacity there with what we have with the 4 shows. But starting potentially not quite weekly, but who knows, eventually 2 weekly, a Tomb Raider podcast. Would be wonderful, because she's such a touchstone for the empowered, and also like to the point where she's a ubiquitous, a female protagonist that she's instantly associated with, and with this medium, and with the evolution as well of the perception of and like the incorporation and the portrayal really of women in the medium. So she's been there every step of the way. So and I resonate so much with like hearing, for example, there was a post that I did not like a couple of years ago. I just had this like whole post. It was like Faith from Mirror's Edge. There was Senua from Hellblade. Lara from Tomb Raider, and like Aloy from Horizon. And I just was like, this is really, we really need more of this, definitely. And if you want to think about maybe the OG of female protagonists, unless you're thinking Miss Pac-Man, we're definitely talking Tomb Raider. And I really resonate with like everything with sort of the angle of this medium, which hasn't been really definitely still to this day underrepresented for sure. But just, I think the main thing really is just like with the film coming out, and the incredible performances, and just also the artistry of these new games is astounding. This has become a bit more than a tease. It's actually going into my seriously my passions for that property. But needless to say, definitely, if you are interested in that, definitely chime in, and I'll pass that on to one of my co-hosts. And I won't reveal them yet, because we want to keep a little bit of surprise for what we do there. But little inadvertent tease. There you go. So, my man. Okay, so this is I'm about to bring. This is the one that I found the article. It says the new Shadow of the Colossus is so good it erases the original. Whoa. Sometimes.
What? The original?
Exactly. Sometimes preservation is also an act of destruction. This is from Motherboard, right? I was like, wow. I love the recently released remastered version of Shadow of the Colossus for the same reasons critics loved the original version released in 2005. It tells an epic story without words, makes me care and think about the monsters I'm slaying, and establishes an unparalleled sense of scale by asking me to climb lumbering beasts that functioned as giant walking levels. The remake of the PlayStation 2 Classic, available on the PlayStation 4, does everything that a good video game remaster should do. It updates the graphics, smooths out the rough edges, and stays true to the soul of the original. After 12 years and several different re-releases and remasters across 3 different systems, this Shadow of the Colossus is the definitive version of the game. It does such a great job. I know, right? It does such a great job. I can't imagine why anyone would go back and play the original. And again, this is like a lot of people. Like,
I can.
I know, right? There's going to be so many angry people. But again, I connect with this author personally. Again, all viewpoints are valid. It's all about remaining civil and just like being able to respect each other's opinions. Totally. So then they write, that's weird. Ostensibly, the point of a remake like this is to celebrate an aging video game in an industry that tends to move fast and forget. But in one sense it achieves the opposite. Shadow of the Colossus is such an improvement on the original, it erases some important aspects of what made it stand out in the first place. The new game is beautiful, twist, but it lacks the context that made the original an achievement. You're liking this? Interesting, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought to think about the time it was put out, yeah.
Yeah. In case you, like me, never played the original, Shadow of the Colossus was an action game developed by Team Ico and published on the PlayStation 2. Players control a wanderer with a sword of light. It goes on and on and on. So this person is saying basically both the positives and like the constructively critical aspects of that it erases, and it makes it like that's such an interesting headline to share, because when again we use the analogy of museum preservation, when you're trying to restore something to its fullest picture and like the most vivid version of it can be, there's an element of destruction involved. It's not all about preserving, because you need to, in some ways, like for example, not that I suspect that you spend your days, Logan, reading about like restoration or archaeological repair or anything.
Not really.
Exactly. But say you break a pot many thousands of years ago, you lose some of the pieces that construct like that edge. You actually need to kind of break into it again so that you can actually like repair it. So this is something that happens sometimes with like DIY and stuff as well. So I find that kind of interesting. So what has been one of the headlines that you've seen or that you want to read out from maybe regarding the title, man?
I don't know. I mean, I think you've said them all. Really I was very interested in the Us Gamer one, but I don't need to keep talking about the negativity surrounding. I think that's still a very small part of what it was. So yeah, no, I mean, I've skimmed some of the headlines, but all the ones that were really interesting, I think you said already. I will say, I kind of wish that The Last Guardian was received this way.
Yeah.
But I do hope that as the years go by, people will come to love it in the same way as they've come to love Shadow of the Colossus. And I'll also say, in one of my classes just a few days ago, I was talking to someone who said, "Oh, I never played the original, and I'm so excited that I waited for this one because it looks so good." And I was like, "Hell yeah, man! You got to go play this." He's like, "I definitely will."
Nice.
So it's really cool. That's what remakes are good for. To just to get people who didn't play the original, who've heard about it, who might not want to go back to a PS2, who might think, "Oh, I don't have time for older games. I want to get into Death Stranding or whatever," and to sort of bring it into the current time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agreed. I'm transfixed by this one. I've got the article in front of me. It's BGR, Shadow of the Colossus, perfect remake for newcomers, old fans alike. This shot of Barba, or Barba, as gotta roll the R. Just the detail in its face and like everything, like the bricks, the individual bricks of its face, which, again, inherently, I'm gonna. By the way, I think you sort of half jestfully but half seriously asked me, dude, how are we gonna fill one episode per Colossus? Like what? It's just But if you think about it, that's the whole idea of putting this material together. It's the be all end all. Like if I came to you and said, you have one chance in your entire life to talk about this Colossi in everything it is in its entirety, and then it's gone and it's dead, just like how we slay them. That for me creates a slightly kind of like hyper emotional kind of link and makes me tap into, well, then let's assess the wabi sabi of this thing. Let's look at the true essence of how this was designed and what it makes me feel and what its face makes me feel. And for example, with Gaius, I was seeing in some of the cutaways, Gaius is actually, he's featured quite or rather whatever the gender of the Colossi is, featured very prominently. He's on the cover. He's very, very often maybe even because of that really dramatic sword strike that he does, and I was seeing a cutaway. It was on Facebook, and just how he shakes you off when you're just about to kill him. He's trying to shake you off desperately. He's and just seeing the fur move and everything, and you just feel horrible. It's just but again, you felt that way obviously with the PS2, but it's the same thing as if you gave me maybe a PS2 era picture of a puppy and you kicked that puppy on screen. Right? Not that I harbor any resentful, unconscious thoughts towards puppies. I love them. But speaking just from that empathetic point of view, it's like, oh, well, that's a pixelated puppy that its face doesn't even look realistic. Oh, that's still pretty harsh to see, but okay, well, whatever. But then you see, if that was rendered in full, almost photoreal, hearing the actual maybe the sound as well of that, everything combined, it really does enhance that feeling of you're basically a tyrant. You're a tyrant in the name of love, in the name of preserving in basically upsetting natural laws of death. But nevertheless, Wanda's not a hero. He really isn't.
Yeah, I mean, though, can I just say that the act of playing the game and felling the Colossi is certainly very fun and epic. I think that in all the admittedly very very obvious and sort of discussion of the fact that Wander ends up not really doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I think people maybe kind of forget it's pretty cool, climbing on these beasts and going it's with your horse beautiful. And I tend to be, I think, much more sympathetic to Wander in general because he, there was something that I mentioned on my blog where Kotaku, in their review of the remake, they really kind of go off on Wander. They call him a thoughtless little shit. That's a quote.
Ooh, that's awful. I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, and they talk about how you think he's brave and you think he's gentle, but then at the end of the game, and it's No, I think
Yeah.
Wander is both gentle and brave. Actually, he's just doing something that is not the greatest thing to do because he loves this lady so much. Um,
Gosh.
and if you look at the sort of the macro scale, yes, he's bringing a demon, back, and he could possibly destroy civilization or something like that. And
Yeah.
he's killing these creatures that are pretty beautiful, and they probably, most of them don't really seem to be very aggressive. But if you look at it just from Wander's point of view, that's a classic noble kind of tale
It
there. So
is.
there is really, I think that it's not something I'm like immediately going to bring up, but like I do whenever people go really hard on that Wander's an asshole aspect, which is something that I would have definitely been interested to hear Sam's thoughts on, because I know in his video he does discuss that quite a bit. I do kind of want to mention that this is in a way to game, and the story is simple, but also maybe not that simple.
Yeah.
Um, and
Multifaceted.
that's one of the aspects, yeah, where Wander is, I think, quite sympathetic, as well as, of course, the Colossi are.
Yeah.
And that's just definitely something I want to mention.
No, me too, absolutely. And for me, for example, like I don't know if this is something you believe in, but like weirdly, like I was named Albert, obviously, like my name, and my mom would read me like stories of like knights and stuff, and weirdly, I don't know if this made me particularly like have this affinity for like back when, not to the point of like, I mean, I had to kind of overcome a bit of that stage where I was like uber chivalrous to the point of like losing self-assertion and like losing like basic boundaries and just like and I would just be like super overtly chivalrous in my earlier years, to the point where I was actually forgetting the whole point, which is like, hey, it's another human being, but like that's the thing. I have this particular connection with chivalry too far, and I had to kind of ease back and like redevelop, like really like, again, it has to have a purpose for me, and chivalry without a purpose, it makes you think of like those Hollow Knights. There's actually, I mean, I think there's a game called Hollow Knight. Anyway, little
Yeah, there is.
tangent. But when I phrase like a Hollow Knight or a Hollow Hero is like the Gilderoy Lockhart. It's like that they have this supposed self-narrated nobility and they have this rationale to themselves, but everything they do undermines that and counters that. So Wanda isn't in that bracket for me. Wanda, he is tinged with darkness, but he is a hero to me. I mean, I know I said he's not a hero because he is felling these ostensibly. I mean, look at this. Like these beasts are like they emerge from the roar of the earth, kind of thing. Like it's implied that they are the embodiment of the essence of the sacredness of the natural order and of nature, and that they cannot be conquered because nature can't be conquered. And you need to humble yourself to that. You need to let her go. You need to let her go. You need to let her go. So all of these things. By the way, listeners, we'll be jumping into at one point the movie Reign Over Me, which features low-key Shadow of the Colossus is one of the main aspects of that. It flew over a lot of people's radars.
Still haven't seen it.
You need to. I know it's an Adam Sandler movie. Really, please just watch that one dedicated scene where it's like he won't let himself forget his wife from September 11.
Right.
Because of these, he has this the central concept is trying to bring back someone who by all extents like you shouldn't be able to bring back, and not letting himself forget the falling structures and the colossal destruction and all that. So he is to me in like my first, because I sympathize so much with nature. I love nature very much, and I think the more you humble yourself to nature's lessons, the better. The first thing that spills out of me, oh well, anyone who thinks they're arrogant enough to take that down, they're not a hero in my books. But then I think about me. Then I think about childhood me, and I think about fairy tale me. And would I do this for Ray, for example, like my partner, my girlfriend? Like, of course. And that's the thing, what you can ultimately sympathize with. And this tells me a little bit, by the way, about you, man. Like we've only riffed so far as much, you and I personally, like over this podcast, but like ink blots, for example, like Rorschach, about those, like the psychological tests.
Yeah.
Well, for me, these situations here, when I hear people in like the angles and the ways they relate to stories, I don't know if you have this, but that tends to be like an ink blot for me of like, this becomes a Rorschach of their approach or like their understanding of something. So just as you said about like sympathizing with Wanda, as I do as well, in my own way, it told me about your empathy. It tells me about how you relate to people's rationales, and like also to how forgiving you are as a person as well. This tells me that, like, for example, if it came to you needing, like, say, a member of your family or like a friend or something, like they've done something awful, like really almost unforgivable in the eyes of the law. But they told you, look, this was literally to either, like, obviously bringing back people from the dead is impossible, but you can even say maybe it was like to keep someone alive. It's like, if I didn't do this, this person would be dead.
Yeah.
Are you going to stand there and say, no, you shouldn't have done that? Will you take that stance, Logan?
Yeah, no, I do tend to be very sympathetic. So, yeah, I definitely think you have a point about sort of being able to tell how people think by their opinions on art. For me, the one of the real sadness of Shadow of the Colossus, along with the fact that the Colossi are dead, is the sadness that Mono wakes up and spoilers, of course. I think that's a given in the podcast.
13 years.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't mentioned it, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think the real sadness is that Mono does wake up and Wander does complete his goal. But Mono, aside from seeing aggro, may not necessarily know exactly what Wander went through to help her and to bring her back. And then she can't really spend time with him, which is, what he wanted. She can, I guess, in a sense, but not really the way she knew him. And that almost is the real sadness to me. So yeah, you could say I really am. And definitely when I first played the game, I was way more focused on the human aspect of Shadow of the Colossus and not so much on the Colossi aspect. I think that having both of those aspects kind of dueling with each other is, totally genius, and Ueda is the master storyteller for doing that.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, another like metaphor I'll extend to you is like Wanda's story and Mono, their dynamic. You can look at that as, I haven't read one personally. Maybe I'll inevitably come across it because it seems like something that sadly has happened. Is so say a friend of yours is dying because of an organ failure, right? And you volunteer to give your own organ to help them. Let's say a kidney transplant or something. But say, the Dorman thing is like, it'll come at a great cost. And say that in the middle of the operation, they find that they have a complication on your end. And then they say, look, we can either, like, we've encountered a complication. We can either, and your friend is dying, we can either remove this and give the kidney back to you. And so you back up and they'll die. Or in the process of you having done this thing of, opened your body up and given of yourself for the other person, what will you do? Like, what is your choice? And you can see that as being like, the original intention is like, if I gave, like, for example, Logan, if you needed an organ, I'd give one, and I'd say, because I connect with you, man, you're a friend, like, I wouldn't want you to die or anything. And exactly, and I would say, and I would do that. But if in the process, the sad thing being that, like, I die, even though, like, the whole impetus was like, yeah, I want you to keep you alive and everything, and like, so that we can, like, just, you can be alive and you can be in my life, kind of thing, sort of thing. And I'd say the same for Ray as well, and I'd be like, that's why I would do it. But then what if for example, I don't know, Mono could speak and tell Wanda, I don't want you to, like, maybe if she did learn, like, there's this theory about the worthwhileness of sacrifice and where it comes from to be sacrificial, and the whole martyrdom thing. And there's a theory that the other person would be angry with you because they themselves wouldn't want to live without you either. So they just said, Mono might say, well, you just put yourself through a whole lot of grief for something that I don't want. I didn't want to live without you. So now you're dead. I'm alive. And now we've just switched places. Nothing's been accomplished.
Yeah.
We're still separate. What do you think of that?
It's so sad in so many respects, like he kills all these colossi and it endangers the world, but then the world it seems to be safe because Lord Iman stops it.
Yeah.
But then it's still depressing because Wander is, essentially dead. But then it's kind of okay because Mono's alive and there's a baby Wander there. So it's a roller coaster.
It is the ultimate roller coaster game. But this is also why, again, buddy, it's why this story has endured. Because, again, we talked about the timeless things. We talked about light and dark. Your Tumblr, lands of light and dark. These elements of interplay are what make people gather around fireplaces, mothers, daughters, generations after generations. They tell each other these stories about this duality, because life is duality, and we can take, and I think, like, I mean, I could bring up the article here, but essentially it started along the lines of like, look, this is, by the way, I have one of your tabs open of the map, the wood burnt map of are you kidding me right now?
I know.
So beautiful. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's from, I guess, like November or whatever, and I totally did not see it back then. That is amazing.
It's crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, there's been digression after digression, after tangent after tangent in this podcast. And I think
I love it.
we started. You were talking about some article, but
That's right. Oh yeah,
that-
I'm right here. I'm right here. It's a Shadow of the Colossus because I'm basically saying timelessness, light and dark, and about like I've said before, like Fumito is the embodiment of like interactive artistry, of like it's and like my relationship with art, and like why I'm here, why like I connected with this purpose of doing these long form, like really like showcasing this medium, following it along its growth, assisting it in its growth, this beautiful worthwhile thing that like we're here on this planet given this gift of creativity as a species, like it's all tied in, all wrapped up together. And this from Jacob Siegel from BGR, yeah, Shadow of the Colossus is probably the best game of all time. I say probably because I haven't really reassessed my list since I first played Shadow of the Colossus in the mid 2000s on the PS2 and decided it was my new number one. Which I love, which is great. He's like, I haven't had the need to think about whether or not anything could surpass it because that simply is the best game of all time. I just love that, but that's the thing is, if I had to point to here's a be all end all story about the duality of rationale, and like Ray and I talk about this. She has like clients with different motivations. She does that emotional intelligence work. We discuss like where does it come from for someone to rationalize in their mind to do something that in many ways is, as much as it comes from a good place, inherently destructive, inherently in some ways contradictory, and that can actually almost ultimately undermine their whole reason. Like you take the nice guy culture of like, oh, I'm such a nice guy. Why don't like there's yeah. So that whole thing of with that rationale of saying that it's all just an agenda for a deeper insecurity and for a self-inadequacy and this lifestyle of entitlement and expectation from like girls or like other people or whatever, the whole power play and the whole agenda having really of that, like it can be an interesting thing to do, to examine like where did this come from for you, what place did it come from inside you to do that. So we're actually dipping a little bit into what we're going to talk about like going forward with like, because on episode 2, like the next one, episode 3 is going to be like literally all about this, and I want to definitely get Sam on for that one because it's like where like I just want to do like just that final, like ultimately I just want to like break down all of where Wanda's at and who Mono is, but like what have you heard about the theory that like Mono is his mother at the beginning? Do you know anything about that?
Nope. At the beginning, I've never heard that. No.
Yeah. So the idea is that, that like because of maybe timey-wimey kind of thing, she's been dead for a long time, like a long time, but she's frozen, so her body hasn't aged because when you die, you don't really fully die, like you as in like you don't age after you die is what I'm saying. And in this, the reason why because the way that my sort of headcanon, so to speak, is that it's not like she died a couple of days before the start of the game. I believe that his arrival at the Forbidden Lands is due to a very long quest of having maybe gone through like archives or done his like whole Gandalf montage of going into of like the year 34 of the Second Age, like reading with piles of paper, like where do I find this hidden land and how do I transport myself there, and I think the thing that may have motivated him is not just the death, but like she died, but he noticed maybe that, well, she's not aging, so what does that mean? And again, I've got so much headcanon for you, man, but I need to kind of rein it in because we've got a whole episode dedicated to that, But
that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, did you? Because I just voiced one of mine that I'd heard, or rather, like sort of riffed and imagined myself. What is the most out there theory you've heard about Mono and Wanda going into this, or like a reason why they're doing what they're doing?
No, I haven't really heard anything that I would say is as crazy as that.
Okay.
Obviously people have speculated that, she could be his sister rather than like his girlfriend, or that I'm sure people have speculated that maybe she like didn't even really know him, that you could go that route, that it's sort of like a Braid situation, where Wander is kind of a crazy guy.
Yeah.
And that's fun.
Yeah.
But I certainly haven't heard anything as interesting as her being his mother, who's been dead for decades. That's really something.
Well, that was the first thing that came to me when that came to me was also, I didn't mean to. It's just how I phrase it. I bunged up a bit. Like I said, have you heard of that theory? It's like I haven't. Like I riffed that. I don't know if it was something out there already, but to my extent.
Oh, so you thought of that?
Yeah. To my knowledge, yeah, that was one thing. Yeah, sorry, I should have phrased it better. But that came actually from seeing that art that Fumito made. Because it made me think of if that was a flashback, interestingly, instead of being, oh, Mono's alive and there's baby Wanda next to her. What if that was a flashback and that's like Mono was his mother all the time? And Mono sounds very, very close to mum. It's like if you just change an M to an N, But again, there's nomenclature, speculation there. So much that we're going to dive into. But anyway, so in terms of our segments, we've sort of dipped a bit into news. The news is the headlines that we've been discussing. I've read from a few of them, definitely. So, like, again, listeners, I'll be posting some of these here. I like to kind of do article compilations. Do you do this at all? Like, you like to go through and just sort of see what everyone reads, sort of says about something?
Not necessarily with reviews. I'm more into opinion articles than reviews.
Okay.
So when a game comes out, especially if it's not a remake, because then it's like I don't really want to be spoiled on this by reviews.
Yeah.
But even if it is a remake, I tend to read like 1 or 2 reviews.
Yeah.
And just kind of leave it at that. But I'm very interested in opinion articles, so I will look for those.
Definitely. You do know that at one point, with the kind of, we're talking about it overall on this one. Actually, let's keep it to here because we're going to be zooming in for each of the segments. Each of, again, listeners, if you have the schedule in front of you, whatever, next episode will be Wanda, Mono, and the Forbidden Lands. That'll just be, we're just going to immerse into everything. Again, using this approach of, this rationale of like, we're never going to talk about this again. Let's explore everything. Put this in the archive, and now that's out there as a thing for posterity, etc. That's kind of the going forward, Logan. That's kind of how I want you to think about it. It's just like, yeah, this is our one chance sort of thing. By the way, I wrote a whole article at one point talking about why, Final Fantasy, like using the example, like again, the relation here is that it's the feeling from something that it's going to be the last time you go through it, and maybe you can get this either from a theme or from a tonal choice of the story, but like in its nomenclature, for example, and the fact that for example, everything started again. It's an anthology format. So what I'm saying is, like, with Final Fantasy between 1 and 2, there's different stories, right? They don't connect with each other. They don't share characters. Same with Fumito's titles, even though there's some theories about like one being a prequel or sequel. That when I know that someone makes something with the idea that they'll never hear from them again, I get an extra pang of like hyper emotional kind of empathy kind of thing, and that connects me so much more to the story. That's why I don't really like endless sequels that follow the same characters, because I lose interest. It's like, so that element of finality, and then, again, Shadow of the Colossus is all about finality. It's about ending these creatures' lives, and it's about the ends of the earth, and to which ends of the earth would you go to save the one you love. So there's a lot of that, and I got a lot of people from like Last Guardian, for example. They write about having like cried a whole bunch at the end and saying like, I can't believe I'll never get to experience all of that as I did for the first time again. Even though you can physically put the disc in again, play it again, it's like there's this that mournful quality that people have towards like, this was so beautiful, I'll never get to experience that again. So I just wanted to infuse a bit of that in the structure of our episodes going forward, of like, really just put yourself in that space. I won't do like a meditation thing of like, everyone pretend that you're there right now. No, I won't be that like kind of lame or corny or anything, but it's just that sense of like, because we'll be again, when I don't know if emotions are going to get too high, but we're going to be reading people's like stories, and I don't know if you've read any. Have you been on the Journey blog, by the way, like the people who shared their stories about playing Journey?
No, I haven't seen that.
No, it's really, talk about emotional. Like, people have said, like, because of this basic stripped down premise of like, I'm a figure, there's a mountain ahead of me, it was about me and my journey, and just going through this, like, they describe these outpourings of emotion they feel, because there's so much silence. You can fill that silence with your own interpretation. You can apply it all to yourself, and how that's helped people like unlock emotions, and again, no expectations of the kind of stories we'll encounter, but I know that there's going to be a couple of those that I've already seen. Actually, a few people, they write in about how deeply this stuff has affected them. Yeah, so Journey was the first that like it came to my attention, like holy crap, and Journey is one of the sort of children, you could say, almost of that game company, children of like Fumito Ueda and his approach to
Yep.
games. So yeah, that might be an element too, buddy, of like people writing in. So I'm really excited as well for that. And again, listeners, you can, by the way, listeners, you can write in anonymously. That's totally fine. We don't have to name in or anything. It's just we really do want to share, like, again, especially with like the music. For me, like the fucking music of this game, man. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can be having some pretty intense emotions while listening to it, and like, especially the beginning. Like the beginning of that, like the beginning of the adventure and everything. It just, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. What is sort of the music of Shadow of the Colossus make you feel, man?
I mean, certainly the intro is my favorite piece of music from the game. The intro to Shadow of the Colossus I consider pretty much perfect.
Yeah.
In pretty much every respect, and there's something about the first few notes of that. Where it sort of leads you, and it reminds me a little bit of the Blade Runner score, where like it starts with this, I don't know, it starts with this like arpeggio of this like mysterious sort of sounding like arpeggio that just really fits really well with the beginning of something. And Shadow of the Colossus has that too, where it just starts with these few notes, and you don't hear that exact sequence of notes again in the score. You hear kind of variations on it, but you don't hear that exact sequence. And so that's like kind of the game's hello to you, as a player. and the fact that I think, from what I recall, I think the music starts like a split second before the visuals actually come in, which is also really great.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's great. I mean, it starts with you just kind of looking out over nature and seeing, immediately sort of catching the kind of dark tone of the story, and then sort of starting with the eagle and then focusing in on Wander. And obviously we know that the eagle also leads us out of the story at the end of the game. It's really amazing. That's a historic and iconic intro for sure.
And I need to read up on eagle symbology there, but there is this this connectedness with that they preside over events. Like I think at the very top, I'm doing God of War podcast, and the very top of Yggdrasil is an eagle watching all the events of that myth play out, from its birth to its end. And actually between the eyebrows of that eagle is like a hawk. So it's, again, kind of awkward, kind of interesting kind of stuff. But needless to say that, again, that's something as well from a movie or from a storybook of like the eagle kind of beholding everything. And again, this imagery of birds, which we're seeing with the girl and the sleeping giant with the doves and everything. He should just straight up admit it and just make a bird game, Fumito. Make a bird game.
Yeah. You should, if Ubisoft ever does a sequel to Eagle Flight, then maybe Ueda can get in on that.
That's right. But no, man, I'm back to what you were saying about the music. Like, as you said, like those notes never happen again. This, again, right off the top, starts this feeling of something that never will be regained, and that's something that connects with the whole message of it, which is Mono like cannot be, like, her life cannot be regained. There's this, especially with that piece, like there's this almost like this word, I'm trying to think of it. It's tentativeness, like say something like trying to come to life. You know how it goes. I'm going to, like, please forgive me, but like it goes na 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 na, and then it stops.
Yeah. It's also
like
contemplative and just
it's like her pulse trying to come back, but then it stops. It's like na 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 na, and then it's like na na na, and then like her heartbeat ending, and then it na na na. Yeah. Exactly. And that's right there, a musical description of this woman dying, not being able to come back, and then that na 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 na, like that's Wanda going out wandering on his journey to try and bring her back, even though her life, just like that violin, has just, whisked away, and won't come back,
Yeah.
You just gave me goosebumps there with that whistle. That's crazy.
Are we out of the article news section yet? Because I feel
Buddy,
like we've kind of
buddy.
been talking about the
Okay,
game, you know.
okay, you need to understand something about interactive artistry, buddy. I always say them. This is like your enduring grandma that you go to who's like, oh, we're gonna do all these things, but then you end up just like baking and like doing all this stuff together all at once. I'm like that. I'm an old
Yeah.
man. I'm an old woman. So, and the way that my analogy extends, it actually says, so some people literally they have like, it's like a course, a series of courses. They're like, okay, enough with the first course. That's it, done. We're moving to the second one. My approach is like all of the segments are ingredients, and the conversation
Right.
is like a cake. Like I bake it every time,
Okay.
so everything can be peppered in and out. Bless you.
Thank
And
you.
and every week and every episode is like we've together with you, we like sort of bake this cake for our listeners. Like
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
we've certainly had some good discussions already.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. We are, sort of dipping in and out. So that was kind of out of our news. We did a bit of Reddit rundown. I might jump into actually to sort of fully, again, who knows how it'll take shape, man. I'm saying this thing about like, cakes and everything and like everything mixed together. But I do appreciate how people have, this, they like the structure. Again, in conversation. This is respectfully to all the people who have their segments, who segment them out. I love them. The kind of funny guys, absolutely. I appreciate that they go topic by topic and all that. In natural conversation, however, people jump around,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how I've always felt with interactive artistry. It's just this, it's like the podcast where you just breathe and like you can just, there's no tensions or anxiety about needing to keep. We obviously endeavor not to be sort of doddering, and this is speaking directly to myself, to make sure I stay, it with some kind of trajectory. But the idea is, like, mellow, like too much of the internet is loud and full of like really loud kind of blaring noises and thumbnails and flashiness, and like this place is, again, it's like visiting your grandma's. Like I totally own it. Like I'm a tattooed grandma. I really am. It really is. There's a comfort to be had there. But yeah, so I have Reddit in front of me. Do you have Reddit in front of you, by the way, the Team Ico?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so actually I'll throw it to you. Just shout anyone out who's sort of presented anything kind of intriguing for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the most intriguing thing to me has definitely been that post on The Last Guardian this week. Like I said, I've kind of been trying to avoid the Team Eco subreddit recently, just because of all the Twitch streams that have been going on and people talking about the little secrets of the remake, which I don't really want to see.
Yeah.
But I have looked at a few threads. I've looked at some of the opinions on the Us Gamer article, which some people were people were on that subreddit were mostly more optimistic.
Yeah.
Some people are saying, oh, we'll see. I guess there's one thread saying, why can't the Colossi defend themselves better? Which is an interesting thought. I think it's just because they're really huge and you're really
huge,
tiny.
And you're tiny. Have you never seen Star Wars?
Yeah.
The X-Wings are pretty tiny compared to the Death Star, I just figured I'd throw that out there. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And there was a thread, a negative thread from that very mean dude, so I won't talk about him.
Yeah.
Then there was another thread, actually, and this is something that I tend to think about does anyone think the internet is spoiling the game for people who haven't played it? And that's a whole conversation about, well, because this is a remake, are you allowed to show more? Or should people who haven't played the game be watching any of this footage? And that's a whole other conversation, but that's a conversation that should be had. And someone's saying, people have been uploading videos of Malice, which definitely they were not supposed to because of embargoes. And then, they shouldn't anyway. I mean, Malice, come on, he's the last one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was reading other ones here. I actually have, this is kind of a funny one. User I am the Brenchman, happy shadow of the Groundhog Day. Look at that thing. Look at that thing. Can you see that?
I haven't seen that. Let me look at that.
That is crazy. It's
That's really funny.
But like it straight up looks like one, like the same fur and everything. It's incredible. That's so great. But yeah, I'm going to be, again, listeners, I'm going to be, as I mentioned earlier, having clips from Bluepoint. They've been doing these great, and yeah, that's where the title of this episode comes from, as I mentioned. From a piano concerto to a symphony.
So when we take on a game that has Shadow's prestige, a lot of responsibility comes with it that you can't just brush off. This is a classic. There's no denying what it is in people's minds in the space of games, and that we had to make it as great as people remember it being all over again. And that was a high bar.
Going from a PlayStation 2 to a PlayStation 4, there's certain expectations. Just re-releasing it the same way we had it on the PlayStation 3 just wouldn't have done the title justice.
We don't even consider it a remaster inside the studio. It is a remake from the ground up. Collectively, we understood this had to be beautiful. There was never a question about what our goal was, what we had to achieve. And so the question was, how do we get there?
One of our biggest challenges has been staying true to the original atmosphere and environment and making sure that we maintain that while also increasing the graphical fidelity and visual quality of the levels.
We used a lot of the base geometry for the very original game and kind of built off of that, taking some of those really basic core art direction cues and then expanding it out into a larger, more filled out world. I kind of use the analogy, it's kind of like taking a concerto that's just piano and trying to expand it into a symphony, trying to add all these instruments and then taking the vibe of it, taking the feeling of it, taking the direction of it, and expanding it into something that a modern audience would enjoy.
For instance, the video that we showed at Paris Games Week, where Wander wakes up at one of the save locations, that forest looks vastly different from what it did in the original, but we worked really hard to maintain the feeling that that forest evoked when you first entered it, which was a sense of awe. It was, you're entering a very special place in this world. We rebuilt all the assets. We rebuilt the Colossi from the ground up.
We had to do it that way. The amount of detail that we needed and the amount of polys that we were pushing to get these things looking right. A lot of these Colossi took a few months apiece to make. In the first game, one of the most incredible things that I remember was the hair on the Colossus, the fur. That was like, at the time, I had never seen anything like that, and we felt that it was important for the fur to be interactive and to be one of the central points of the Colossus, like the original one. So a lot of time and effort was spent in just getting that perfect.
In addition to making the game better looking, it gave us a second chance to actually improve the things we couldn't before. So the vision was, let's take old control scheme, make some improvements to it that people would expect to get the game kind of more ready for a new audience. At the same time, we didn't want to alienate the old audience, so we have a full classic control mode that allows people to play the game exactly the way they remembered it.
We wanted to make sure from the very get-go that having a solid frame rate had to be at the top of our goals.
So collision got changed, got made better.
So much work has gone into rebuilding the collision for this game. Moving the game to 4K, supporting HDR, supporting 60 frames a second on the PS4 Pro. Those were all significant technical challenges that we had that thankfully turned out really great.
The one thing that's definitely good is that Ueda has a great amount of trust in what we do because we had already done the remaster, and so I think that helped a great deal on our current project.
Everybody has a very clear picture in their own mind of what Shadow is. We obviously have to try and interpret all of those things from all the millions of different fans that this game has, and that is, it's not a burden, it's an honor and it's a great responsibility to take on. And we're fortunate that we're in a position where we can do that.
It was an absolute honor to work on this project. It's so cool, man. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Because that's how they described what they did with this title. So the love of a classic, Bluepoint Games reflects on the original Shadow of the Colossus.
I was actually in the QA department when Shadow of the Colossus was first being released on PS2 back in 2005. Like, there was nothing else that could match it.
I remember a couple friends showing me Shadow of the Colossus, and it was early on in my game career, and just being absolutely blown away.
I thought that it was really exciting to be able to climb on top of the Colossus, to actually basically be on top of a moving, dynamic level.
It's memorable. You never forget the wow factor that goes through your mind and through your heart as you're standing on top of this thing as it's trying to shake you off. I think the game left such a mark on people because it was a tragic story. Your connectedness with Wander and Agro. As you go through the game, these two characters grow and their bond is ever apparent. The art style they'd chosen for the game left such an indelible mark on my soul as a gamer.
It's funny, like, breaking it apart and actually looking at what they did with what they had. It's like a magic trick, you know, where you're like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. I have to know, like, how they did it. They really did something that nobody else had done before.
It's pretty significant to me. I played it a ton, and to land back on it was kind of the dream project for me. It's really cool to get to work on something that people hold in such dear regard.
I see it as a very great responsibility and a great chance for us to do the right thing for this title.
It was an absolute honor to work on this project. It's so cool, man. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
By user Eternal Forest, so thanks for sharing that. And then, yeah, you just need to be careful again with spoilers around the place. So, you know what's going to be great, Logan? I'm looking forward to, you know, once because by the time we catch up next week, we're going to have already played it. You know, we'll actually have, like, experienced this and everything. So that'll be good, I reckon. Don't you think?
Yeah.
For sure. So Team Ico is swarming with spoilers, but again, you know. Oh my god, buddy, have you seen user 7am Anis? Tried my best to make the teasers more clear for your eyes. What do you think? He completes the creature on the other end. He does a sketch on the other side.
I think I have seen that. Yeah, this is about, you know, the fourth game. And I saw that a while ago. This is on Team Eco. I need to have all these subreddits open at once.
That's okay. So it's an amazing Imgur post. You know, these you know, gosh, I'm looking through it now. Like, also, user, well done. Oh my god, they're going so extensive. A giant pig human-like creature who looks like Wanda is climbing its back. I think that is the creature that is shown laying down in the teaser. He's breaking down not just the pig. This is gonna be my Reddit readout, actually. So once you found it,
okay.
I'll read from it, if that's okay.
Yeah, I have seen it. It's very cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's user 7am Anis, so ANYSS, tried my best to make the new teasers more clear. And so you go into the Imgur album. It's insane. He said, what I imagine the giant creature to look like. He's laying on his back with his feet facing us. So, which weirdly could basically be a super grotesque creature that has very, like, it's just, again, very un-Ueda-like, something that really could make, again, you know, you and I talked about, like, what it's time for the ugly colossi kind of thing, or it's time for, to go into, you know, we've had all these beautiful creatures. I wonder how it would be if Ueda did approach something from wanting to tell a awful story of, like, as in something, that has just more aggressive, or just, is it straight up ugly, and just like, well, I say grotesque, but just something that has that, you know, in the same way that Guillermo del Toro's creatures can be really ugly but also sympathetic. So weirdly, that might happen. Yeah. So found, and she talks about the image we found. You know, highlights of what I can see in plain sight. The 3 drawings, I think I figured out what they could be. So I personally don't think there'll be any connection with, like, the robot creature. I think that was just a sketch, you know.
Could have been.
Yeah. So they're exploring that too. But they talk about, like, essentially what we touched on, so that's great to see that being recognized. So well done to you, my friend. Then we have a fantastic video by user Tarkovsky, Evolution of Team Ico Games, talking about exactly, it's in the title there. So really appreciate people putting this content out. And one thing I have to do, obviously, with Bluepoint and stuff, I put it in the descriptions of, like, where the clips come from. But I do, with these creators, I want to obviously, like, get in touch with them and ask them if it's cool to put in content, like, include their stuff.
We've mentioned, like, a lot of different you know, kind of posts and videos and and, you know, I'm sorry that you might have to link all this
Oh
stuff.
no, I love it. I love it absolutely. It really is all about just like connecting folks between each other. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot there, and I love Oh, I killed all 8 birds that hang out at Mono's Altar after defeating the 8th Colossus. Oh
I was
my.
just looking at that post. Yeah, that's something,
Interesting, but needless to say, so very lots of nice activity there. Again, some not so nice, but editing will ensure, listener, that you will never know some of the things we read. Never know. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're coming up on the hour and 30, buddy. How do you feel?
Oh.
Like I'm pretty cool to we've. I mean, I've listed here our main topic here. We have to make sure again we hit on all points again, touching on this theme of like this is going to be our it's like the episode dedicated to the game itself before going area by area. Was there any anecdotes maybe from the development of the original 2005 title, or maybe even from the remake, that you've read that you'd like to share, or that kind of resonated with you when you learnt of them at first?
Well, I don't remember too many anecdotes about Shadow itself. Obviously, I know what happened with the original trailer.
Yeah.
Where it was supposed to be a multiplayer game, which I'm obviously extremely glad that the game came out in the form it did.
Yes.
We know about the beta colossi, as they're called, the unused colossi. And I'm also sort of glad that they weren't included, because a lot of them seem like they might have been sort of redundant or sort of lame, which is something that I think, when a lot of fans hear there were unused colossi, they go, what? Oh, I would have loved to fight these. I really hope they put them in the remake. But I mean, the only unused colossi that really sounded like an interesting and unique fight to me was the monkey one, who would like hang on giant stalactites, I think, which was like really awesome. And he had a great design too. That's the only one that I would really want to fight. All the others, it's like, oh boy, there's a boar that you have to ride your horse around, and you gotta like get him to walk in between these 2 rocks, which ended up in the final game. Like that doesn't sound that fun to me.
Oh gosh, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, so that's really what I have to say about the pre-dev era. Are there any stories that were there? Because I don't really remember anything you could term as like a story on that.
I do have one. So there's a site, shmupulations.com. It's a nice. I have a personal place of fondness in my heart for like the older kind of HTML kind of sites, and when you look up interviews from like 2005. So this was originally featured in a 2005 book. It's a portrait.
Yeah. Let me just say, sorry, that
okay.
I have this article saved in my bookmarks, and it was just so long.
I know. I'm just going to read out little parts.
I like didn't want to read the whole thing.
I mean, we are a long format show, buddy. We can go through it if you want.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's make this happen.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
So, Ueda, you've made some of the deepest, most impressive games with Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, but your pre-PlayStation history as a creator is also very interesting. In today's conversation, I'd like to take our time and go over it all. I understand you're originally from the Kansai region. Ueda says yes, from the Hyogo prefecture. I grew up in Tatsuno City, which was really quite a rural place. And there you go, obviously. Trees and everything around, of course. It's a couple of cities over from Himeji, actually pretty close to Okayama Prefecture. So would you say your cultural sphere of influence has been mainly Kansai? This is very thorough, you're right. I would. I also went to college in Osaka, lived there for 2 years after graduating, and moved to Tokyo. So let's talk about these formative years for you. What kind of child were you? By the way, listeners, we were actually going to be diving into... We don't have a dedicated, as you can see in our schedule, episode to the man himself, because again, he himself likes for everything to be tied into, like, he's not a very rockstar developer kind of thing where it's about just him.
Nope.
He's always talking about things in terms of his work, which we want to respect here. So weaving this in, sort of these stories and anecdotes. Listeners, you heard Logan discuss, his installation, Ueda's installation project with like the animal noises, So we just want to do that throughout the series. I figured I'd mention that before I crack on. So let's talk about formative years. So what kind of child were you? He says, I don't think I really stood out in any special way. I like to draw, and I spend my time in class drawing manga and comics. What kind of things did you draw? Ueda, portraits and caricatures of my friends. I'd make up stories to go along with them. I used to love going to my friends' houses after class and showing them my drawings. My drawings always made people laugh, and I remember desperately trying to hold in that laughter during class. Okay, so he was a bit of a trickster. He was a bit of a mischievous child. Yeah, awesome. You have the article in front of you, by the way, by any chance?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Awesome. So he asks, so Man, I'd love to see those now. Ha! Do you still have any of them? Ueda says, none at all. I'd usually give them away to the person who I was drawing. In elementary school, I won a prize for some of my drawings. I won prizes in other competitions after that too, but I don't even have the prize certificates anymore. Laughs. He seems like, again, you said it best, Logan. You're like, his relationship with his work and like the man himself is often very different to like this vaunted, like super artistic, and like he's none of that. Like he's actually definitely a mellow and quite an understated guy.
Yeah,
But on
seems that way.
Yeah, but on no level is he like, I'm this scarf wearing artist or anything. What do you think about that, man?
I just think it's cool, I mean, you don't have to act like your art,
Yeah, you don't. Yeah.
I do think it's funny that he, like all Japanese artists, tends to kind of downplay how good his stuff is.
Yeah.
But I like that there's a whole other way to that we don't get to see. I mean, through the art, really. The real Ueda who's just kind of this guy.
Yeah, exactly, right? Totally. That's absolutely right. But yeah, so he says my parents.
Okay, so hold up. Let me just pause for a sec. Can you hear like a vacuum cleaner coming from my end?
Dude, I am, first of all, not significantly, and man, I'm all over it with that noise canceling, boy. You don't have to worry at all. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, because I didn't know that it was the cleaning day today, but I was told that he was going to do it Monday. So
I'm just saying I want a vacuum cleaner themed enemy in Fumito Ueda's new game. All right, that's what I want. And I want you to play a dog-like creature who's afraid of it. I'm kidding. Wait. I'm kidding. But yeah, so Ueda says my parents weren't the type to say that kind of stuff as in the drawings he did as a child. So were there any particular comics you read back then? And it's like, no manga, but there were some anime. Made for TV movie 1 Million Year Trip Bandar book by Osamu Tezuka, which was broadcast during Nihon Terebi's 24-hour TV summer specials. I remember that one clearly. I'll have to look into that one. Yes, those 24-hour specials. So you watched it when it was broadcast. Yes, and I think that was one that was never rebroadcast. But I have a vivid memory of watching it then. Also, while I do remember playing games, I loved catching fish way more. You mean fishing? And it's like, yes, I did fish with a pole too, but I actually mean with nets. I'd make the nets myself, trying to figure out how to catch as many fish as possible in them. Did you know about this, Logan?
No, not about the fishing. I mean, I'm sorry. I knew he's always had a passion for animals. I didn't know he was a big fisherman.
And dude, this article again, we can see this. We have a photo here. I'll post it at one point to the Instagram. So one of his influences, Dragon Quest II, above Osamu Tezuka Bantar's book below. Right? You look at Osamu Tezuka, buddy. Akira Toriyama's colorful artwork from Dragon Quest appealed to a young Ueda, while the Bandai book image absolutely brings to mind wonder and aggro, and even the palette of that, absolutely, for sure.
The mountain behind them, yeah.
I know, yeah. Oh, dude, again, formative years, things that kind of lay their seeds in us when we're little, and just like we sort of grow into these things that combine and weave all these different influences together. So yeah, when I picture a kid from your generation, I usually think of them being obsessed with video games like Gundam and stuff like that. Were you into any of those? Ueda, maybe games, if you think of it that way. I played the Famicom all the time, the disk system especially. One game I loved that I remember even now was Smash Ping Pong. Konami sports games were also always been so great, But again, there's a precedent for the Madden, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's nuts, right? Also, I mentioned the Famicom, but I love the Sega Mark III equally. Probably my original love of art and drawing attracted me to the Mark III, and the greater number of colors. Okay, I'm going to say this respectfully. I love the man so much. He can be very similar to me in his own way, like a grandpa. Like he'll just go into these stories of like really specific things and just like, again, he's not he's not a spotlight kind of guy. That's why it's actually very surprising that he did as extensive an interview as this one. But yeah, I'm really, really loving this. But we are coming up to because how I have to record at 1 right after this one.
Oh yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so I'm good to let's revisit this one. Hey, I like the idea of like moving our way through this huge article. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit every week or something, a little look at Ueda's past.
That's right, exactly. So I'll finish the quote, obviously. So also naturally, when the Mega Drive came out, I joined that camp. I really been a long while since I brought a Nintendo system, all that stuff. Did you play Dragon Quest at all? I did when it came out. I think it was my latter years at elementary school. And he talks about being influenced by Dragon Quest, which I had no knowledge of. So again, listeners, there's a chance that you may not have known that. Now you do. So now we know about that. So we will pick back up on, now I do hear the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, I think he's real close now.
He's close.
Just,
Run,
yeah.
run! I'm kidding.
Maybe, yeah, it's a Colossus coming after
It's a
me. I don't know.
Colossus. Oh no, I'm gonna put some music in the background. Yeah. It actually sounds like the sound of the stuff that comes out of the Colossus, which like sort of jets out the black ink. So, listeners, all this time as Logan's been on the show, he's actually been literally out slaying Colossi.
Oh boy, there it is.
In the Forbidden Lands. He's actually talking to me on Bluetooth right now.
Oh, it's shaking me off now.
That's fantastic, awesome. But so there you go, listeners. Now you've basically witnessed the birth of a mini segment, which is reading this gigantic, really awesome, in-depth article here. But needless to say, this began as a tangent, coming off of what are our personal anecdotes with the development. For me, it was that it was going to be called Nico. And that the third one he was going to call it Trico, and that these games, even though they're sort of separated from each other narratively, there are obviously theories with them being connected in the actual world themselves. But I think the main thing for me was knowing that Fumito Ueda, he actually creates all the preview stuff himself. Do you remember that? Like from Ico.
Yes, where you're saying how he really animates them himself.
Yes, so he's a bit of a multidisciplinarian that way, and some
That's
of his early renders, like he created like the in all likelihood probably designed everything and did this sort of thing as a pitch to his team. So it seems like he takes on a lot of work, very similar to Kojima that way. He sort of wants to busy himself with all different things. He's not just an arbiter; like he participates in everything. And then I remember him. This is just my memories really of reading about the game and just seeing like how different it was, gosh, to Ico. It was actually initially kind of hard to believe that it was the same person, because Ico in many ways it's a much gentler tale. Like there's nothing as crazily intense as some of the imagery we see in Shadow. And here's where insert obligatory comment about the middle chapter needing to be the darker. Like the Empire Strikes Back, la la la,
Star Trek 2,
yeah, exactly. But no, very much so. Like the middle chapter is about the conflict, and there's obviously conflict all throughout the sort of 3-act structure of these things. But actually, I'll feel that to you, buddy. We talked about the girl and the sleeping giant, about how it'll divert away, and sort of. Do you think that we could be seeing like the birth of a new trilogy with the upcoming games?
That would be very interesting. For me, I tend to kind of cycle through different ways of thinking about the games. I sort of think that Ico and Shadow of the Colossus are certainly more connected with each other than either of them are with The Last Guardian.
Yeah.
Because to me, Shadow of the Colossus is specifically sort of about the beginning of a curse with the horns. Ico is about the end of that curse, the removal of the horns.
Yes.
So to me, that is almost open and shut. The Last Guardian could be said to be, a combination of those two, both in the gameplay elements and in kind of the story tone. Sort of a midpoint between. I don't know where it would take place on any hypothetical timeline. So you could say that it fits with those two. You could say that it doesn't fit as much. But there definitely. Once we see more of Game 4, I could tell you whether I think it's part of a quadrilogy with the other three or part of a new trilogy, which could definitely be a possibility. But I would have to see more to figure that out.
True. Yeah, I mean, you just made me think of the idea of it being just like, maybe like how the Grimm's fairy tales, like there's no sequence really. I mean, there's order of them being published and stuff and written, but they're all tied together. And I could see Fumito maybe taking more of a turn towards not really thinking of these things in terms of 3 acts. And I don't think he really was, frankly. But we just tie them together because I think it's just a natural thing that we do of just grouping things by 3s and such. But yeah, I figured I'd read just as we tail things off, just one at least from the article, as in the sort of just the main sort of Wikipedia here. For those, again, we sort of function as a kind of quasi audiobook kind of thing, so reading sort of stuff for folks as well as kind of having our own discussion. So development we have. With a team of just 35 people, Shadow of the Colossus began development in 2002 under the project name Nico, a portmanteau of Next and Ico. And also, Ni is number 2 in Japanese,
Mhm.
and was intended to be a sequel to Ico. An early technology demo for the project showed up at the DICE Summit in 2003, depicted a group of masked horn boys riding horses while attacking and defeating a Colossus. However, Fumito Ueda expressed that at the time it was simpler to reuse the character design from Ico's protagonist, and that he never explicitly desired a sequel to Ico. Japanese pre-orders of the Shadow of the Colossus later included a bonus DVD with the concept video. Listeners, anyone who may have any knowledge or a copy of that, DM me, because I want to see that.
Yeah,
I know.
we've all seen the video. It's been on YouTube. It was included with the collection. But that DVD sounds interesting.
And seeing if there's anything else on there, exactly. So a trailer describing Nico's plot and an introduction to the development team states that they wanted to use in Shadow of the Colossus. Ueda and producer Kenji Kaido held the team to a high standard throughout the production. An admitted perfectionist, Ueda felt that only 1 of 2 out of 500 artists who applied to work on Shadow of the Colossus met his criteria, and often demanded thorough changes in design until it matched his vision. Dude, he like Fumito has been to the Forbidden Lands. That's why he was. That's the same thing they say about like Tolkien. Is like it's like the feeling is that he was there, and then no, I've been it. I know it. I actually went. I know exactly how this looks, and so this is how it has to look. So that's kind of what comes to mind there. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of the greatest creators really must do in their minds is to really know these worlds and know these characters. All the time you hear authors and creators saying things like, well, I didn't exactly decide how these characters would act. They decided that. And so you could absolutely say there would be a similar thing with the world of a game. So yeah, I mean, that's vision. That's what it is. That's what vision means.
You perfectly encapsulated it, dude. Absolutely. So for his part, Kaido challenged the programmers to meet the concept of realistic physics in relation to the movement of the Colossi and the subsequent effect this movement would have for Wonder, both in terms of how he might be displaced and how he may be able to use this movement to his advantage. Little brackets aside, this is me editorializing, but they like whatever the complete cosmic opposite of sitting on your laurels is, this is what they did. Like they made this kind of it's a bit of a quiet kind of exploration hand-holding game. It is probably the most go-to example for me of a creator saying, no, I'm not going to ride any coattails of success or acclaim with Ico rather. This is, and it's almost like they, in a weird way, like they I think of this as a band called Mastodon, for example, that I really I resonate with. They're my favorite band.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. So they have a title called Blood Mountain, and they said at this point in our career, we made this and this imagery of mountains and this imagery of insurmountable odds, right? Everything ties in there thematically with Shadow of trying to climb this fucking thing and stab this thing. And again, the same, I can't help but make that reading as I did with Last Guardian of like, this thing is just squirming. It won't stay in one place so that I can like guide this thing to where it's supposed to go. Same thing that they had here of this immense technological mission that they gave themselves to actually develop all this tech for PS2. It's unthinkable. It's like saying, I got a little bit of acclaim for this little poem I wrote. Okay, well, I'm going to sit down and write an entire 3-book trilogy, 1,000 words each. I'm giving myself this challenge. Like, whoa, like what do you think of that? Like how they decided like we need to really take this even further and just do something completely beyond what we're even able to do right now. They had to pioneer so much tech. So go for it, Logan.
Yeah, that's what I think people mean. That article you were reading where he says that the context in 2017 is sort of lost a bit because when Shadow of the Colossus came out, like there was not a game even close to that. Like God. Not only from the riding on the giant beast aspect, but I mean, even Eco couldn't really compare to and Eco is obviously beautiful in what it does, but it was not the same as the feeling of riding on your horse through this desolate yet clearly full of plant life and nature. Just you could feel nature when you're riding through. Eco was beautiful in some way, but it was not that. It was different. So that's what people mean when that guy meant when he said that it lacks the context, and for Team Eco to build that from the ground up, based only on what they had done previously and saying we're going to sort of take some of the tone from Eco and we're going to do something completely different with it and we're going to kind of make an action game is just, I mean, it's an amazing achievement.
It's an amazing achievement, and I think actually thank you for that, for tying it back to that article, because that actually gave me a context on what that whole talk about context was. Of placing Shadow of the Colossus remake in an era where we've had Horizon Zero Dawn, we've had
Journey.
Journey. Yep, absolutely. We've had these since Spring Up, but what I love is that. There's reference made to that even here with, like, you see some of these Bluepoint documentaries. They say, well, there's shit that we like they didn't have to worry about because of resolution levels. They didn't have to worry about this because literally the PS2 wouldn't have been able to do this one insert aspect of dealing with physics anyway, and we had to, in a way, again, follow through their footsteps and kind of go through a similar process with because again, even if you look at maybe God of War 3, for example, like they had huge enormous enemies there, but a lot of it was scripted, right? These things are living levels. Maybe someone will write a book out there called, like, oh, Living Levels, the story of the development of blah blah. But that's kind of what they are, and I frankly haven't seen anything like that, even on PS4, even on PS3, apart from obviously the Shadow of the Colossus remake on PS3. So you're right. Like, I love what you did. You just sort of referenced and make sure it's not forgotten that this came out. This was like, name another freaking game in 2003 or sorry 2005, man. Like, what is it like? I'm just trying to think of, like, Taxi Driver, like, you know what I mean? It was or Crazy Taxi or whatever it was. Like a lot of PS2 content was just like meh. It was like the engine, like. And I love Soul Reaver, I really do. But some of the Soul Reaver 2 stuff was janky AF. It really was. And facial animations as well. I mean, think of, okay, I'm just going to say this. Do you remember Devil May Cry, buddy?
Yeah, I played maybe half of that game.
Yeah, but you remember, like, I did it recently. I don't recommend it unless you want to have, like, a fun kind of cringe early 2000s thing. But like, this was like dignity. Like, this was majesty, this game that came out on this medium, which still had, like, games were still obviously progressing a lot since the Pong days, obviously. But PS2, I would still define that generation as, like, there was still a lot of wacky shit, and there'll always be wacky shit in games. But it was like an emergence, not just technologically, but again, thematically as well, of I just picture, the visual of, like, someone, like, really just standing up, straightening their back and being like, this is what this medium can do, from that point of view. So yeah, I've got the whole story of it laid out in front of me, man, but unless I can throw it to you about any particular anecdote from the development here, anything that you wanted to shout out, like there's a Legend of Zelda thing I wanted to reference here.
No, I mean, all I can really remember is that obviously Ueda's love for animals is prevalent in Shadow, of course, and more in The Last Guardian. But there's nothing specific that I could really say, that I want to talk about.
That's okay. So Ueda cited The Legend of Zelda as an influence on the boss design, referring to the bosses as inverted Zelda dungeons, which I love, because instead of delving into something, you're crawling on the outside of something, which is really interesting. So and then there's this whole piece here about, like, wrangling aggro into becoming this fully fleshed out, like, incredibly well animated, and still the animation to this day for that game of a horse is probably the best horse animation on PS2.
Yeah,
definitely. So.
And I will say it's really funny to me that Ueda talks about how surprised he was that people liked aggro so much, when it's like, dude, like, you made the best animated horse in video games. Like, you're like, you made the horse that's with you throughout the entire game that you can, like, be friends with. You didn't think people would enjoy that? You, like, the animal lover, were surprised that, like, people really connected with that horse.
I know. Again, that goes in line with the guy's kind of, it's just in his atoms, this weird kind of super endearing humility. The guy, he's just like, oh, really? Oh, okay, sure. Glad you enjoyed that. I wasn't really thinking of that. It's like, buddy, come on. He's such a cool dude. He's a really mellow dude, and he's like, and he's like that quiet kind of super talented friend of yours that you just have big, that won't necessarily maybe come out of their shell in a group of people, but that, as you saw with that article, listeners and Logan, that we're going to read from, when you get him one-on-one, I'm pretty sure, like, that's when he sort of goes into his goofier sides and is like talking about this development and his sort of relationship with this stuff as an artist. And again, I mentioned, like, I really dig and resonate, and I'm kindred with people who can laugh at themselves and who take their work seriously but not themselves. So one more quote here. All elements of the game, including audio and gameplay and visuals, were used to achieve an atmosphere of the lonely hero, which Ueda considered important to the development. Lighting in particular was used to establish a dark, fearsome setting for the Forbidden Land, while the protagonist's sword would provide a means of navigation that was direct and only expressible visually. Like Ico, Shadow of the Colossus uses distinct style of lighting. The game's engine uses elements such as desaturated colors, motion blur, and partial high dynamic range rendering, with a heavy emphasis on bloom lighting, which is that dappled lighting look. So that's synonymous with the guy, definitely. So so do you feel like Bluepoint have captured, some people have said about Wanda's particular physical appearance that they haven't gotten right? I believe it's one for one, like perfect. I love it. But what is what do you think? Do you think Bluepoint have carried that over into the remake?
I think there is a difference. That's basically like just kind of what I'll boil it down to. Like, yeah, there's a difference, you know, like nobody's perfect. I don't know what Bluepoint went through. It's not as green, it's not as foggy. And you know, perhaps they could have maybe tried to go a little closer to what it was in the original game, but I mean, seeing actual footage of the remake, it's like, hey, when I'm going to be playing this, I don't think that's going to matter much to me. And certainly with Wander, I tend to also have a bit of a higher opinion on that. Like, clearly, I think Wander is the element of the remake that has gotten the most complaints from original players.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those complaints come from pictures of him at angles where like you're not like really supposed to be looking at him. And that's what's going to happen when you include a photo mode in your game.
Exactly. Some people are so ready to jump on the hate train. I'll tell you, man.
but specifically, you know, that there's a screenshot of him from the intro cutscene, which you are very clearly supposed to see his face, and he looks kind of sad. I think that looks fine. Like, I think that looks totally good. Like, there were some screenshots from earlier on in the production of this remake where his face like looked like it had a kind of a bigger jaw than normal, or maybe just his face was smaller than it should have been, his facial features. And it looks like they fixed that. Like, that shot of him from the remake looks perfect to me. So I think it's probably going to be just fine.
That's right. I think, speaking of, you know, people who like revisit these things lovingly with this care and this resonance with the material, I want to read from Nomad's blog, and this will be my kind of closing thing before we jump into supporter shoutouts. And again, if you wanted to add anything, buddy, to the tail, because we're coming up to the 2 hours here. So Nomad, again, this is so him or her. I'm not sure if it's a guy or a girl.
It's a guy. I've had some emails with him. Yeah.
Fantastic. And obviously, if you did want to kind of use that avenue that you've that sort of channel, that channel that you've kind of made with the guy, if you wanted to get him onto the show, again, it's totally optional. Yeah, we'd love to.
He's on Twitter too, so we can both try.
That'd be great. Yeah, let's do that. And listeners, yeah, like definitely let him know about the show, and it would be really nice to kind of delve into this material with him. He says, if you're like me, then you'll be very excited about the upcoming rebuild of Shadow of the Colossus for the PS4. By the way, listeners, this is the guy that, I mean, just go to his blog. It's all self-explanatory. He's poured a lot of himself into exploring this title. So yeah, really impressive. So in June this year at the E3 Gaming Expo, it came right out of left field and surprised us all. I, for one, had not expected any new games from Team Eco, aka Gen Design, for many years. And although technically this isn't their doing, Bluepoint Games are doing the actual work. It's another incarnation of my favorite game that I can look forward to experiencing. I've been keeping an eye open for any new announcements or video trailers. He goes into it, but he points to a screenshot here. Heavenly light diffuses through the treetops of the autumnal forest. I love this guy. he really gets it. So he dives into here. So I had a small hope based on something Ueda said in the official Japanese art book. There were some grander ideas, such as changing Shadow's ending or adding some of the Colossi that got cut from the original, and honestly having features like that would have been attractive from the business perspective. If we put just a few extras in, though, gamers would naturally expect more than we could provide, instead of just putting in a few half-baked things. I thought it'd be better to stick with the original concept of staying faithful to the base work, and if I get another chance to the future to do a remake, I might wind up changing quite a lot more. So on record, Logan, Ueda said that changes he doesn't believe they're likely to be implemented. However, I do think because of how well this is being received and how clear of a connection they like Sony Studio as well, who did a fair amount of work as well. They deserve definitely a shout out too. And Bluepoint, I think a couple of them, low key, I really think Fumito wouldn't overtly advertise it, but I think some of the things that he wanted have been put, not maybe extra Colossi, unless Logan, make sure you're sitting down. extra Colossi DLC. No. I won't go there.
Maybe.
Maybe. But yeah. So have you heard anything about Fumito's direct involvement or relationship or comments that he's made about it, apart from those comments he made?
No, I mean, something we didn't mention yet was this list of changes that he said he wanted them to make when he saw footage. But all we heard about that was that he sent them a list. We don't know what happened after that. One would hope that they would have, taken his list into account. But he said, that he did have a list that he sent in, but I think overall he was pretty happy with it.
Yeah. That's what I've heard. I saw his Twitter retweeting Bluepoint there. So there's good blood there. There's good vibes overall, and that's all really.
Yeah. Gen Design was saying congratulations to Bluepoint. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, listeners, and that's a pretty nice kind of thing to dovetail. Towards the end of the episode is the guys and gals who were responsible bringing the original into the world, and like the creator himself really has connected with it. There's obviously a good connection there. That isn't always the case with remakes, but there's a kindredness here, and the two works are not shadows of each other. They're siblings, and they are connected, and they are and as I've given my analogies of archaeology, and this being the biggest fulfillment, and the truth that's kind of laid sort of dormant beneath those PS2 shell of pixels. What, if you had to use an analogy for yourself before playing it, would you say is the relationship between Bluepoint's remake and the original, buddy?
I would say that they're two different flavors of the same sort of food or the same sort of cake.
Oh, I love that.
I would say. And they share so much in common, and they're just a little different from each other, only in ways that are good, in a sense. One cake might have one type of fruit you really like on it, and one other cake might have little shreds of chocolate on it that are also really good. So it's off the top of my head, I would say it's a bit like that. Sorry, I would say to people who really end up really liking the remake, and that's your first time playing it, consider playing the PS2 version, because you're going to be surprised by how much of that same feeling you're going to get from a game that's now 12 years old.
Please do. I mean, it's very likely at one point, not far from now, the PS, like the remakes, I'm sure they'll find their way either onto PlayStation Now or something, because at the moment they're gated behind PS3, but it's going to happen. There'll be just this availability of all of and at some point when there's like a flash sale or anything by the original Shadow of the Colossus, definitely, as Logan is saying, have a look. And that's what I didn't mean to cut you off, by the way, Logan.
That's fine.
I was saying, just like listeners, I think he's put a great kind of like Logan, he just really summarized it really well about the connectivity between these two, and I really love that, like different flavors, different riffs, and they can coexist, neither negatively impacting the other or anything. Some people, again, it's what I think it is, Logan, there's a lot of discussion in wider media culture, like with movies, of like rehashes, preying on nostalgia. So people, I understand people's walls are up, and they've been hurt before about from other people, like going to their properties and like remaking them for cash in. So, and all I'm saying is, like, it's just like, don't worry, like Bluepoint, they're a friend. You can you can lower your jowls, the hair that's stuck up on the back of your, like the jaws can kind of, you can relax. You don't have to growl at them. They're safe. They're good. They're one of the good guys. So
absolutely,
that's how I would put it for sure. So tailing off into supporter shoutouts, we've had no new patrons this week. Totally fine. I will just say again, if you've connected with or you appreciate sort of the endeavor that Logan and I and interactive artistry as a whole is doing with these longer format shows, and this sort of thing is something you'd like to that you connect with and that you want to sort of see continue, definitely $1 a month I believe is the minimum, and there's a whole host of kind of perks that we have there. I'll be sending you a handwritten letter, not handwritten as in like by hand. I'll be like signing it digitally and everything, but there's that. Just jump onto the Patreon there, patreon.com/interactive artistry to check what you can. I want to actually tailor each of the packages for the podcast. So for God of War like for Death Stranding rather, there's like a pin I'll send you at a certain tier, like 15 a month. I'll send you this particular pin from like it's like an Etsy thing, a collaboration I'm doing. God of War, there's a similar pin, and then with Shadow of the Colossus, it will probably end up being like a comparable kind of figure kind of thing, just to say that look, you helped this Logan and I and everyone here grow this thing into more than just a show, into an actual institution where like an actual place that is dedicated to showcasing and celebrating and discussing and exploring this medium and yeah, in a way like in sharing it as its true self, as at its most potential rich and to the greatest fulfillment of what it can be, sharing that with the world, not just the aspects of competition and recreation and distraction, which is sometimes what games are associated with. It's a true art form, and couldn't have hoped to have a better co-host for this show, dude. I feel so good. I'm primed. Are you primed for like going into this remake or what?
Heck yeah, oh yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll do our little sign off here. So we have so look, we humbly hope you'll enjoy and join us in the journey of coming we humbly hope you will enjoy and join us in the journey of compiling a body of analytical discussion, and crossed fingers also developer interviews, theories, and personal Ueda-verse stories and more, which we'll be asking for you all to share in all the outlets. So it's definitely time for this sort of peerless work of storytelling to receive a thorough, intimate, and loving chronicle now and for posterity, and from everyone who's sort of come together and appreciated his work for so many years. So email through to fumito@gmail.com if you want to submit any like tattoo photos or stories, or if you want to volunteer, definitely to jump on, or if you want to join as a co-host, definitely. And we'll step out into this kind of shared odyssey together, is how I put it. So, did you have anything else for the listeners, buddy?
I don't know. Join us on this odyssey.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen, listeners. Kindred and super appreciative regards, everyone, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
buddy.
Yeah.
What?
Sorry. Do you want to say bye last? Is that like a?
Yeah, we're still figuring it out. Like Taylor, like with Death Stranding, we have like the game has already begun, which is a perfect teaser, which is what Kojima
Ooh, yeah.
says. Yeah, Kojima.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I just feel like when someone says bye and I don't say it, it's weird. Like I'm not trying to like usurp the final bye.
oh bye, oh bye, oh bye.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's cool, dude. But you did get a buy in there, did you? I think you did. Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Okay. Easy. Well, you know what, Logan? I'm gonna give you the final buy. I'll be the bigger man. You can have the final buy from now on. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, do whatever the heck you want.
Do it.
But
yeah, that's all. Actually, I want that to be the sign off. Listeners, do whatever the heck you want. All right, get out of here. So we kick them out of the podcast at the end. You know.
yeah. Well, all I got to say, I mean, I think that was a good episode. We obviously went, we were very tangential, but in the end, when your discussion is not so much the Shadow of the Colossus game itself as it is like Bluepoint's remake of it before release, there's only so much you can say. So I understand that we were going from place to place on that one.
And that's the thing is like, say again, these really are just like catch ups, you and me, and we're sort of sharing them in the format of a show. But that's again, it's that kind of naturalistic. I mean, I appreciate this in podcasts myself, is when I actually feel like it's just like I'm catching up with the people, not that I'm being blared at with that really loud YouTube voice, letting you know that this is how some people talk on their YouTube videos. Just letting you know that this is, and it's like I get fucking anxiety when I hear people talk like that. You know, are you looking forward to Shadow of the Colossus? So am I.
Yeah.
Tune in and subscribe. It's like I need to lie down. You know. I don't want to call out anyone. But did you just get exhausted then? Because I did.
It can get a little tiring.
It can. But do you have any like particular content creators you enjoy, like other podcasts or like YouTube people that you'd recommend to me, Matt?
Let me think. I do like Digibro, who's an anime guy. I don't know if you're into that at all.
Yeah, sure.
But Digibro's like kind of a jerk, but he's also like kind of interesting and smart.
That's cool.
Yeah, but he's like very into like anime culture and like, into the terminology. I like Red Letter Media because I feel like everybody likes them.
You're disappointing as my son.
Yeah. That was good. I've never heard anyone even do an impression of him. That was good.
Half in the bag.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love him.
I like H3H3, though I know they some people say, oh, they're too much on this side politically, and I don't know. I think they're just a couple of people.
Yeah.
To me.
That's cool. I'm big on JonTron personally. It's like comfort food, that stuff. He's such a kindred dude.
Yeah, he's pretty.
Yeah.
I've never been too into him, but he's good. I watch his stuff occasionally.
Yeah.
I watch Game Grumps, even though I also kind of get mad at them. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah, all respect to them. It's just like they're just going for a different thing, I suppose, you know. But love those guys. Dan and Aaron are just they're G's.
Yeah.
They're G's for sure.
Yeah, I know. And my friends really hate them just because they're not trying to analyze. They're not trying to really get deep into the games they play. They're using the games as like a jumping off point for whatever they want to do whenever they talk about.
It might surprise some listeners, but because again, with interactive artistry, this air of this going into these deeper angles, really, of like emotional engagement, intellectual content, and cerebral kind of aspects of these games. That's definitely our purview. It's our home. But I'm not going to pretend like that I don't have fun with this medium either. Like that it's not also about like irreverence as well. Like if you lose that, then you just become academic and you just become dusty and dry, and you wouldn't want to be on a podcast with that kind of person, would you?
Not necessarily, no.
It'd be like boring. It'd be like, oh, let's look at the formal qualities. Oh, let's make sure we stay on topic.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Like we're not doddering and kind of purple. That's a word that they use of I think H.P. Lovecraft was said that like his prose was super purple, is like just overblown, like just like enough already. So we always make sure, because you don't want to undermine why you're doing your thing. Like for example, let's take you with your blog, for example. Lands of Light and Dark. If you spammed people, if you just did everything like I believe your blog is one of the most beautifully curated blogs ever. personally, I really do.
I still view it as kind of amateur, but
sure. You can go in the corner.
I don't.
You can go in the corner
Yeah.
with Ueda along with the other humble ass fucking amazing creators. Go.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, that's cool, dude. No, but I want to say that, and like again, it's because you're in touch with why you're doing the thing, and I feel that with you on the show here as well. It doesn't like we don't like go too far off the rails to the point where you don't want to undermine the thing that you say that you want to do. That actually super disconnects me from people, and I really appreciate that when I see and that's kind of what I want to harness here with this for sure on this show, and definitely and you said you were on another podcast previously. Which one was that?
Oh, it was just really one I did with my friends.
Okay.
I'm not really too comfortable naming it because it really was.
That's fine.
It was only.
That's totally.
You could describe it as amateur, so I don't know. Probably don't put that in the.
Of course, I would
podcast.
Never.
In the bloopers.
I would.
I don't really care to talk about that. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, see, everything is another step, buddy, towards and I'm looking forward to like refining the show along with you, and also thanks for the feedback at the very top. I'm actually going to share that. I'll have that in the main show for sure. But dude, have fun with the rest of your awesome, dude, and I super appreciate you being on the show, dude.
Yeah.
Dude, what's the first program that you're? Because I know that with your shows, what's the first one on the billing?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Dragon Ball, right?
They always start with Dragon Ball Super. Yeah, Dragon Ball Super, the new Dragon Ball. Yeah.
I can get into it, man. I'll go to the toaster and make us some fucking Nutella toast.
And then they go into. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, dude.
I haven't really eaten Nutella.
Dude, if you want to break my heart right now, fucking get that shit into you, man. It's so good.
I know. Oh yeah, I should try it. I think I might add it once our copying good, so I'll get more of it at some point.
We're gonna do addresses. I'll obviously not on the air, but I'm gonna send you a bottle, man. I'm gonna send you a tub of that Nutella goodness. All right, all right, man. You take it easy. Have a really good rest of the day.
Yeah. So good luck on the podcast. The other one.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
See you later.
Yeah. I'm just about to jump onto recording now, man. Yeah. Have a fantastic rest of the week, and we'll catch up after we freaking played the fucking remake, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Okay.
See you, dude.
Part 2. Bye.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Fumito Ueda podcast. I am your regular host, Albert. Fumito Ueda? What? Fumito Ueda.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
My bad. Let's start again. Can you hear me a bit better now?
Yeah.
Do you know where the microphone was on top of my head?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's because of my headset. You can adjust it, and for some reason, it lets you adjust it all the way in case people were born with mouths on their heads, I suppose. There's seriously no other point. But yeah, I'm happy to actually crack on, just so because as you saw with that I posted, like I've got 3 shows today, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy, man.
Crazy. So we'll crack on. We'll do a 3, 2, 1 and get into it. Okay. Yep. And 3, and 2, and 1. Also, I'm going to jump into the background. What the fuck? What the fuck? Just want to get that out of the way. That was so awful. Like mods.
Yeah,
mods.
That's really weird.
Where the fuck are the mods, man? Shit. I don't need
and
that.
The guy, like, I mean, I think people on the thread are not sure if it's true or not. And the dude's commenting like it's true, but he also saying some like really ridiculous shit.
It's so bad
throughout the post and in the comments.
Yeah, I was.
Man, yeah.
Did you like how I did a bit of a pivot away from that, but it still feels just feel. I
totally get that you wanted to bring it up again.
Absolutely. I just wanted to address that, Logan. I apologize because this person isn't in the room. If they were, I'd be like, get the fuck out of my house, because we were literally in a really real way talking about vulnerable actual places, people with real stories. So you're a fucking cancer on the internet. You're a cancer on
like,
this game.
Reign Over Me, how that's a great story about that sort of thing. Yeah, but I mean, whether or not any of this actually makes it into the podcast, that was extremely strange, and 90% sure that isn't real. If it is, sorry. But probably not real.
Yes. No, I'll be very judicious with this edit and include maybe even only the vaguest allusion to it without even naming the post, but probably not even. It's not even blooper worthy. Like, what a fuckhead, Excuse me.
Much.
Pardon my French or whatever. But yeah.
Thank you.